Um, I think it does start with character for me, and certainly when I wrote Half Bad, as soon as I got into Nathan's head, if you like, started writing from his point of view, that I knew pretty much straight away that it was working, and you just get excited as a writer because when something's going well, you just feel really good about it, and that certainly happened straight away. And I think it always starts with people. For me, stories about people, and it comes down to characters. Actually, it wasn't. I always had the intention from the beginning. As soon as I knew I was going to write about witches, I didn't really know much about witches. But I knew there were white witches who were good and black witches who were supposedly bad. And I just wanted to play around with those ideas and expectations. So I always knew that was what I was aiming for. And it was quite fun actually, and it actually worked out quite easily because I think I had it quite set in my head straight away from the beginning that was what I was aiming for. And it was quite easy because from my point of view, the characters are a mixture. So the white witches, there's some who are really evil and some who are very good and some who are obviously ordinary in between. And the same goes for the black witches. And it's just this label that's put on them that you might expect them to behave in a different way, but I knew what they were each like as individuals anyway. Well, I knew he was going to be, the sort of typical bad boy anti-hero, and I love that. So that I knew I was going to enjoy writing, and as I said, once I got his voice, which happened quite early on, I just got excited about it. And because I actually wrote the story chronologically from his birth, the first book goes from his birth to his 17th birthday, but I rearranged it afterwards. So we start off at the beginning of the book from age 14 and look back, but I wrote it chronologically. So I built up the character, adding more and more difficulties for his situation as he grew older. And again, it worked. I think I learned about him as he grew older, and it seemed to work very well. I was really pleased. And as I say, when it's going well, you just get excited and want to keep writing. No, shame on me. I don't really think of character arcs at all. Even for Nathan, I had an idea, I know where I was aiming to in the plot, that what would happen on his 17th birthday, because that's part of the story, that on your 17th birthday you have to go through a giving ceremony to become a full adult witch in this world. And so that was going to be his trajectory, if you like. And the other characters came in. Annalise was one of the most difficult to write because I see her as the most conflicted. She's much more aware that this question about who's good and evil. And Gabrielle is, I suppose, one of my favourites, and has actually been a real surprise. I didn't really plan him. I just was struggling a bit when I came up with him as a character. And I just, more for my own pleasure, I suppose, I just thought, I'm going to put in a character who's gorgeous. And I just enjoyed writing him. And it's amazing how he is a big favourite with the readers. And again, I didn't really plan him at all, but same thing, as soon as you hit on somebody good, you know it's working well. Yeah, I think I made the traditional schoolboy error that most people who write fantasy fall into, the trap of making things too complicated to start with. And certainly on my first draft, how it works is that witches develop one particular magical gift, and this is given to them on their 17th birthday. But in my original plan, they got 3 gifts, and they were all quite strong. And I quickly ran out of ideas for gifts, and I quickly got into hugely complicated scenarios where everyone had magical powers, and it was terribly confusing and nobody could win a battle because they could always escape. So that, and I quickly learned, actually, no, just simplify. There's one gift, and people mostly don't have very strong gifts, so the magic is a much sort of less impact on the story than you might think, and there's a lot of real world influence, which I'm actually much more interested in. Oh my goodness, it's changed a lot actually. Because now I earn my living from writing, so and there's two aspects to being a writer. There's the writing bit, and then there's doing things like this, and it's balancing the two really. But certainly when I'm writing, I do now try to get it out of the way, which makes it sound unpleasant, but it isn't. I just want to focus on it first thing, so I will make my coffee, have silence, and write, and try, and I do set myself a word count when I'm doing first drafts, so I will, if I'm being kind to myself, say 1,000 words a day, and if I'm pushing myself, I'll double that, but I don't try to force it too much more than that. I mean, if I have a great day and loads of inspiration, I might write more, but the worst is when you actually look and discover you've done -100 and so you've just deleted a lot. So, but it's all positive. You've still got to sort of cheer yourself on that actually, no, I'm improving things. Well, it was a bit unusual in a way in that I wrote my first story I ever wrote was in a witchy world, but it wasn't half bad. It had a female lead, and it was much more of a love story than not so much fighting. And I sent that to 8 agents and got, I think, 5 replies, and 3 didn't even bother to reply, and the 5 replies were all negative. But one of the replies was from the lady who's my agent now, and she said she thought she liked my writing style, but the story wasn't strong enough. And I actually was overjoyed to get that feedback, and to have an agent say she liked my writing style, I just thought was fantastic, even though it was a rejection. And I just thought, right, I'm going to rewrite it. So then I kept the same witchy world, but came up with Nathan and wrote half bad. And I set myself a year to resubmit it, and I just sent it to her, mainly because I wasn't really that confident, but I just thought she might give me some positive feedback. But yeah, within a few days she was my agent, and here I am. I think you do have to, it's really hard when you're sitting in a room quietly by yourself to keep going and to feel positive about your writing, and it looks so hard to get published. But it is possible, and I think that's what you've got to keep in mind, and write the story that you want to write. And if you love writing, yes, it might get rejected, but keep writing, come up with the next story. I really do think you have to keep going and have a little bit of self-belief.